Hello and welcome to the Ignite Learning Zone. I am happy to introduce you to Shanna Matthews, our next speaker, who is going to lead you through this session of Hello World in 3 languages. Before we begin, I'd like to remind you of the digital code of conduct and just ask that everyone be kind to each other and of course be kind to our speaker. Without further delay, I will hand it over to our wonderful presenter, Shanna.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shanna Matthews. I work here at Microsoft in developer advocacy focused on students. I'm here to talk to you today with my talk, Hello World in 3 languages. The idea behind this talk is really to help people who are new to programming, maybe don't have that much experience with coding yet, to help them and give them an overview of a few different really popular programming languages. Just do a little bit of compare and contrast so that you can get a better idea of, hey, is this weird thing about this programming language just about this language, or is this something I'm going to see amongst most of the programming language I'll work with? When I was writing this talk, I really tried to think about what are the things that I wish someone told me when I was first learning how to code. Okay, so we're going to be talking about the Hello World program today, which if you have done much coding yet, you will probably have seen this or at least heard of it. The Hello World program is used to help developers just get a baseline when they're first starting with a new language. It's one of the simplest things you can do while coding, and it just helps you understand, like, hey, is everything working right? Does my program work okay? Can I get some stuff running before you move on to more complicated tasks? What you're seeing right now is an example of the Hello World program in the language C. We're not really going to be talking about C too much today, but I put it up here because it's interesting for historical reasons. So when I first started coding, like I said, I saw the Hello World program everywhere, and I'd never heard of it before I started coding, and I just wasn't really sure what was going on. I was really curious about where did this come from, and why does everyone use this? So I did a little bit of research to satisfy my own curiosity, and I thought I'd share that with you guys too. So the Hello World program is really old. It was actually first written by the guy you can see in this photograph here. His name is Brian Kernighan, and he's famous for writing a book called The C Programming Language along with his co-author, Dennis Ritchie. C, which is what you saw on the previous slide, is a really old programming language. An older programming language is the programming language B. And this guy right here actually first wrote the Hello World program in a programming book about the language B. That was called, let me see, A Tutorial to the Programming Language B. So he first wrote it in this book about B. He thought it was a good example. And then when he later published it again in C, and his super famous book about C, that's when it took off. So everyone read this book, everyone saw the Hello World program, realized that it was fun, quirky, and really useful for getting started. So we have been using it ever since. What we are going to do today is go over the Hello World program and play around with it in 3 different languages, like I mentioned. Those languages are going to be Python, C#, and JavaScript. I've chosen these languages because I think they're pretty good for beginners and they're super popular, and there are some interesting differences here that we can look at across them to just understand a little bit more about programming. So I think that the best way to get started with any language is just by trying it out on your own in an editor. So that's what we're going to be doing today. The rest of this session is going to be in Visual Studio Code. So I'll switch over to that now. We're going to be talking about these languages, about syntax, about weird things about them maybe, and just taking a look to understand what are the similarities and differences. One thing before I get started, what I have set up here in VS Code is maybe a little bit of an odd way of setting up your development environment, and it's a little bit more complicated than maybe yours would look like when you're first getting started. So don't worry about that too much. Just focus on the code that we're going to be writing, and then maybe some of the commands we'll be running to run that code too. So we are getting started with Python. Python is one of my favorite programming languages, partly because it is so simple. It wasn't actually the first language that I used, but it was the first language I really got excited about using when I was first learning how to program. So the Hello World program in Python is really, really simple. It is just 2 lines. So all we're doing here is defining a variable we've called message and giving it some data, and that data is the text, hello world. So Python is just as simple as defining a variable, putting this data in it, and then saying print. We can run this in Python by just typing python3 and the name of our file, so hello-world.py. And so by typing that command into my terminal, we have run our Hello World program. Awesome, our very first coding. So Python is really interesting, even though it is simple, because it has one very, very odd thing about it, and that is that it is white space dependent. So it cares about the white space that you use. Right here, with just these 2 lines of code, you can't really get a feel for what that means, but let me just add a little bit of extra. So I'm going to add another variable called is_ignite and set it to true, because it is. And then I'm going to write an if statement around it. We're going to change our message. Okay. So what I've done here is I'm checking about this variable that I've set to true. And if it is true, we change our message. So we can run this and you can see that it is working. We're now saying hello ignite instead. But the part I wanted to point out is actually right here. It's just this little white space here. So with most programming languages, you're going to use something called curly braces, which are these 2 things right here to define what might be inside of an if statement or what's part of a certain amount of code. In Python, we don't do that. We actually do that by putting this white space here. So because this is indented in, Python knows that this is all part of this if statement. So another thing I'll point out about Python is that it is white space dependent, and it actually does care what kind of white space that you use. So if I kind of highlight this, you can see VS Code is nicely telling me with this arrow that the kind of white space I have here is a tab. Lots of programmers like to argue about tabs versus spaces and which one is better. I'm here to say it doesn't matter very much. You should use what you're comfortable with. You should use whatever is already existing if you're working in that code base. But you should be consistent. That's the really important part, and that's what Python cares about too. So what I've done here is put 4 spaces to indent this and put a tab to indent this. So to us, it looks like it's the same. If you really look hard, is the only way to find out that they're different. But Python knows the difference. So if we try running this again, we actually get an error. And Python is telling us that this isn't cool. We have an inconsistent use of tabs and spaces in indentation. And VS Code is nice enough to kind of give us this error as well with this little squiggly red line, which you always want to pay attention to those. So why would we use Python? Well, if you are interested in data science, which is huge, or AI, Python is really commonly used in those domains. So if you're getting started with programming and trying to pick a language and you think you might be interested in those areas, Python could be a really good choice for you. Python is also used in web programming, especially in backends and used for connecting with databases. It's also really popular with people who maybe consider themselves coders, but aren't full-time developers. So people who need to automate something as part of their job, or write a little script, or maybe use Python for research or for science. Python's really popular and useful for them because it's quite simple. Python also has a great community and lots of libraries that are easy to use to get what you need to get done. One other thing I will point out about Python, a stereotype about Python, is that it's slow. This stereotype is kind of true when you compare Python to other programming languages. One thing I'll say is that one of the reasons Python might be slow, or Python can be slow, it has to do with typing. And when I say typing, I don't mean like the typing on your computer, like on your keyboard. I mean variable typing. So I mentioned that we defined our variable here, like message, for example. It's a variable. Each variable has a type. So VS Code is being nice enough to give us a hint that this message is of type str, that stands for string. So it's a string type. This right here is a string, this hello world. So Python is flexible with the way it does typing. So for example, if I wanted to change message to have something else in it, for example, have the number 3, That's totally fine with Python. We can look here, and now it says that message is a variable of type int, which is short for integer. Python has absolutely no issue with that. If we kind of get rid of some of this other stuff and run it, see, no problem. Python says, you're all good. We ran this. You're good. Now you have 3. Cool. The other thing I'll say about Python being slow, we won't really get into the details of why this is true, but there are ways to get around and mitigate Python being slow on its own. So don't let that stop you if you're interested in learning Python. Okay, let's move on to our next language, which is C#. So I'll start out with stereotypes this time on C#. C# is kind of stereotyped as being really verbose. And if you just look at the 2 different Hello World programs, you can kind of see why people might say that that's true. As opposed to our Python Hello World program where we just had 2 lines, here we have 13 lines just to print Hello World on the screen. If you're a beginner and this all looks pretty overwhelming, don't stress out. The 2 lines you need to focus on are right here. Lines 9 and 10. These are the ones that are really doing the work of, again, defining a variable called message and then printing out to the screen. This time we're printing it out. The way we print something is by using console.writeLine. All the other stuff that you're seeing on the screen is what people frequently call boilerplate code, which just means kind of that it's putting out there, it's like putting on the screen parts of the program that other programming languages might hide behind the scenes. I like that personally. I have used C# a lot as a developer. I really like that it's verbose. You get to know exactly what you're doing. It puts it right there for you, so you don't have to guess about what the programming language is doing behind the scenes. Okay, so let's run this. The way we're going to run this is just by typing .NET run. This is a little bit different than the way we ran Python. Again, we can just do something simple on the command line, but what's going on behind the scenes is a little bit different. First of all, you notice that we're using a command called .NET, a little bit different. This language, C#, is part of .NET, which is kind of like an ecosystem and family of languages. And we're just typing run rather than the file name. That's because when we run this, .NET is actually looking for everything that could possibly be part of the program in this folder and trying to compile it together for us, which is slightly different than what Python does behind the scenes, just frequently called interpreting. Cool. So quickly, I'll just show you an example. So C# is a language like many others where white space doesn't matter. It is not white space sensitive. So we can do something like this, although you would never want to write code like this. It's really confusing looking. But you can put all of your code on one line, as long as you have your semicolons and your braces in here. It's going to work just fine. And speaking of semicolons, those are actually really important in this language, as opposed to some of the other ones we'll look at today. So if, for example, I didn't have a semicolon in here, C# would complain at me. So we can see here, VS Code is telling us I expected a semicolon, and if I try to build it, it fails. C# is, unlike Python, it's strictly typed. So if we try to do something like we did before, where we change the type of this variable, C# is going to give us an error. It's going to say we can't do that. And that's because when we define this variable message here, we already gave it a type. We told it it's going to be this string type. And when we try to change that on C#, it's going to say, hey, are you sure about that? Please, you need to double check what you're doing. And I like that as a developer, although sometimes it does make things a little bit slower to write your code. So why would we use C#? C#, along with other .NET family languages, are really good for writing any kind of Windows applications. They work together well with other .NET programming languages, and they're great for Windows. They do cross-platform development as well. C# is also used in the cloud. It's used with Azure, and it's good for game programming as well, or AR, VR development. So C# is one of the languages that Unity supports, and there's also a great game engine, the monogame game engine that works well with C# as well. Cool. Okay, let's move on to JavaScript. So JavaScript is our last serious language we're going to be looking at here. I kind of introduced both other languages by talking about how much I love them. Some of my moderator friends on this call won't agree with me, but I can't say that I love JavaScript. It's definitely not one of my favorite languages out there, but it is incredibly popular. So let's talk about why you would learn JavaScript. JavaScript is just unquestionably the language of the web. If you want to do anything on the web, you want to do front-end development, you want to do back-end development, JavaScript is going to be in there somewhere. It's also got lots of frameworks and libraries to help you get started building stuff. And it is really just one of the most popular languages out there. So if you want to get hired full-time as a developer, it's really great to have JavaScript on your resume. Okay, so this is what Hello World looks like in JavaScript. You'll notice again, it's just 2 lines here. So that might make you think it's more similar to Python in some ways, but in a lot of ways, it's actually similar to C#. You can see that we have semicolons again, and we use braces as well. We use curly braces because JavaScript, again, isn't white space sensitive. So let's show that really quickly. I'll just give you another example. True. Braces. I'm going to do something really silly here. Not want to write code like this because it looks funny, and funny looking code doesn't make people happy. Let's run this. We're going to run this with something called Node. Node is just a runtime for JavaScript that works on your computer. And you can see right here we have printed out hello Ignite for everyone. So one thing you'll notice, maybe if you have really sharp eyes, is that I actually forgot my semicolon here. So this is one of the many quirks about JavaScript. In Python, you're not supposed to use semicolons, and if you put them in there, your language is going to say, hey, what are you doing? In C# you have to use semicolons, and if you don't put them in there, it won't build. But in JavaScript, you should use semicolons. You should always use semicolons, but it's not going to do anything if you don't. One of the weird things about JavaScript is that it actually automatically inserts semicolons for you when it's trying to run your code. But sometimes it might do it wrong, so it's always better to put your own semicolons in and have nice white space, even though it's not technically required. Okay, so one of the stereotypes about JavaScript is that it's quirky. So I've mentioned one weird quirk, which is the semicolons thing. Another quirk about JavaScript that I'll point out is called type coercion. So I'm going to start out by just writing a little bit more code here, and you don't need to worry about exactly what's going on. I'm going to get rid of some of this other stuff. So I'm going to make another variable, message2. And so I just copy pasted this. So this hello world is the exact same thing. And in my if statement, I am just comparing the two. So I'm asking, are they equal? And if they're the same, I want to just print out same. Okay, let's try running it. So I tried running this, and it's telling me, yes, these two variables are the same, which makes sense. If I look at this as a human, look at these, it says they're both strings. They both say hello world. Awesome, they should be the same. But if I put in a third equal sign here, I run it again, we don't get the same printed out because they are different. So the reason this is happening is because of what I mentioned, type coercion. When I just have two equal signs here, before it does a comparison of the actual data within these variables, JavaScript is going to try its best to make the variables the same. So if, as a user, I look at this and this says it's a string, this says it's a string. The only difference is that one is lowercase and one is uppercase. But that actually does mean something in the world of JavaScript. One is kind of a basic string type and the other is a fancier object string type. So type coercion is going to try to make both of those into the same thing before it compares the data. When I use 3 equal signs, we're not going to be doing type coercion, so we're doing a strict comparison. So when JavaScript looks at these two variables, it says, hey, one is a basic string type, one's an object string type. I'm not even going to bother looking any further. These couldn't be the same thing. They're completely different types of variables. So just another odd quirk about JavaScript. Awesome. Okay, so this has been 3 really popular programming languages that developers really enjoy and that are used really commonly, but I like to have fun as a developer, and lots of other developers like to have fun too. So sometimes we like to play around with programming languages that maybe aren't so useful and aren't so popular. One of those programming languages is called lolcode. So right here, you can see some lolcat memes. These are like OG memes from when I was a kid. Basically, you combine cute pictures of cats and funny ways of talking, and people love it. So these are some lolcat memes, and developers love these enough that they actually made a whole programming language called lolcode based on these cats. So right here is the Hello World program in lolcode. So really quickly, what this is doing, these are the 2 lines that are important. What it's doing is defining a variable, message, MSG, and then saying it's, like this, it is. So this would be equivalent to the equal sign operator. Hi world, and visible message is what prints the message. So I can run this. And there we go. We have run our Hello World program in lolcode as well. Here's another example of a lolcode program, just to give you a feel for how silly and goofy it is. But yeah, just another programming language for you guys to see the full range of what languages people like to work with. Okay, with that, I will happily take some questions now. I'd love to hear from you folks and see what else you'd like to know.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shanna, especially for teaching us about lolcats. This is something that I had no idea about, so I'm personally pleased about that. So a question that we got a couple times was, just hearing from you about what is your favorite language. I'm guessing not JavaScript.
Not JavaScript. Yeah, that'd be correct. Yeah, my favorite programming language is probably C#. I really like C#. It's a very comfortable programming language for me. I've spent Java, which is different from JavaScript. It's much more similar to C#, is one of the first languages I really got serious about using. And C# is really, they're very close in syntax in a lot of ways. So C# is probably my favorite programming language, but Python is just so simple and easy to get up and running with. It's great for prototyping stuff. So if I were honest, I'd probably spend more time, like if I were just going to randomly start a project, I'd probably write it in Python instead.
Gotcha. Yeah. And I also have to agree with that, especially about, what you last said, just writing a program in Python to begin with. There are some benefits to doing that. And so that leads me to the next question. It sounds like, folks might have experience with other language, like, other languages. For example, a C# developer was saying, why would they want to learn Python? What are the benefits of Python over C#? Are there any particular Python libraries that are really helpful and maybe more specific that you can get as opposed to something that you couldn't get with C#?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say for the most part, if you're already a super strong, super comfortable C# developer, unless you want to kind of get into a different field of programming, for example, like you wanted to start learning data science, I would say there's not huge compelling reasons why you need to learn Python. But if you get comfortable writing in Python, I think you'll find that it is really fast to write with compared to something like C#. And that does, assume that you've gotten comfortable with the syntax and the white space and all the weirdness that comes with Python. But it's super fast to get started with. It is completely open source, unlike some of the C# stuff. And there's really broad libraries. So if you're trying to do something with data science especially, or something with data manipulation, or something with scientific computing, Python is actually probably going to be a better choice for you. Some libraries that are interesting, for example, are like Pandas and scikit-learn that make it really easy to get started doing some, easy data manipulation and data science stuff with Python.
All right, thanks a lot, Shanna. Yeah, and I think those are great libraries that you mentioned. I think that's one of, the exciting things or why people have been drawn to Python, especially if you are interested in data science, machine learning. There's such great resources and libraries out there. So there also been kind of a string of questions just around, wanting to know more resources, which we have shared the links to some of those, and even like a preferred order of going through resources, or I don't know. So I don't know if the question is there. Like, I think probably that depends for everyone. But Shanna, do you have any thoughts about that? About how to go through the resources?
Yeah, there's a ton of resources out there, especially if you're going to be looking at all three of these different languages. I did link, there should be linked in the kind of notes for my session, a few different Microsoft learning paths about how to learn Python, C#, and then one about Node, which is basically an interpreter for JavaScript. I highly recommend both. If you're a total beginner, I highly recommend both the C# and the Python learning paths. The JavaScript one is just a little bit more, it assumes you know a little bit more about programming, but yeah, I totally recommend both of those. And then once you're kind of comfortable with the very basics, the best thing to do is to just try building something. I say try building the simplest thing that you think is interesting enough to actually finish. A lot of the time when I was first starting to learn a programming language and try to build something on my own, I would get kind of ambitious about what I wanted to build. I would say, oh, just doing something super simple like, like a tic-tac-toe game, that's too boring. Why even bother make that? But that's not the right attitude to take when you're first learning a programming language. I totally recommend building just the simplest possible things so you can feel comfortable, make mistakes, and get good at learning. So figure out how to Google the right things or Bing the right things. Figure out, do you like reading books for how to learn a programming language? Do you like watching video tutorials? And then finding out that stuff about yourself will help you learn one language and then the next language, and then whatever else you're interested in learning in tech for the rest of your life.
Absolutely, and great recommendations there. I know I was saying in the chat, I don't know, I'm personally a video learner. Like, I love to watch videos, and I mean, really any kind of like tutorials that will allow me to get hands-on experience where I am writing programs that are reasonable and like simple enough where I learn something and get to kind of build something interesting. So, okay, I think we have time for one more question. So recently we got a question about just extensions that you recommend to install in Visual Studio Code for each language. So I don't know if you have those extensions installed and you can maybe show them off.
I can try to show some. This is a little unplanned, so excuse me if things are a little messy. So Microsoft for both, sorry, C++ is not super relevant. So, but for Python, I know for sure, and for C# and possibly for JavaScript as well. Microsoft actually has official packages, official extensions that they've made and shipped in the store to help with a lot of really great stuff. So the stuff that I was showing here, where it was like showing me error messages. Here's one. Where it's showing me error messages or showing me the types of variables. This is all coming just from this official Microsoft extension for Python, and similarly for C#, etc. So it's gonna give me errors. It's gonna give me warnings in this case. So I have a linter, pylint, which came again with the extension, that's telling me that this is an unnecessary semicolon. So I was saying Python doesn't want semicolons. So it's warning me, hey, don't do that. That's not the normal thing to do in Python. So I highly recommend those. The other extension I'll say, it's not as beginner friendly, but I'll give it a big plug, is the remote extension. So that'll let you connect to Windows Subsystem for Linux if you're interested in doing Linux development on your PC, or it'll let you connect to containers. So this is way beyond probably what many people understand, and don't worry about it, but if you know what I'm talking about, I'm actually doing this law code development in a Docker container, and I can do that really easily with that extension about remote containers for VS Code. So I love VS Code. I love their extensions. Yeah. So those are some of my favorites. Those are my favorite ones. Pretty much all of the great ones that I really love are also come from Microsoft, like official. So there's, yeah, you can be comfortable downloading them.
Yes, yeah, and I mean, there are so many great extensions in Visual Studio Code, so thanks for kind of showing those off. And I hope that answered the question. So we are at time, so I just want to thank you again so much, Shanna, for such a great presentation. I really appreciate it, and we did leave some resources in the chat for y'all to follow up and fill out a nice survey for us.
Yay. Thanks, everyone.